that's another experiment there. It's a odd looking pineapple. Yeah, almost looks like the wind whipped it around. Some of these are just the shapes they've taken on and how they've, that one was actually dead, almost died back completely like 6 months ago, and now it's doing pretty well. That one too wasn't doing so well. But so yeah, we were talking when you first showed up that of all these pineapples here, not one of them has given us a fruit. This one looks like it has a pup. This one looks like there's 2 of them here. Possibly.
Yeah, there's definitely a pup on that one. Pineapples are one of those that, you know, you're going to stare at for years, and they're going to look like they're doing nothing until eventually one day you'll walk outside and there'll be a little pineapple coming out of it. And then that pineapple you will stare at for months feeling like it's not doing anything until one day you can smell it. We talked a little bit about this pineapple before. You told me it was about 3 years old and it hasn't produced for you yet. Not a cause for alarm. Okay. You know, the plant is doing very well right now. It's having a really good time growing. It's storing up a lot of energy so that it can put that into developing that pineapple. Once that pineapple is developed, even if, you know, you choose not to harvest it, this plant is going to die back. And now, just like we see a couple pups around the other ones, you know, well, actually I can see a small pup already coming out of the side of this. So once this plant dies, that pup is then going to grow in its place. And usually the pups will take less time to produce their next pineapple than a pineapple that was, you know, transplanted into this spot. And that's mostly because the pup has already been growing there without you even noticing for an extended amount of time. So were all of these pineapples that you planted?
Yeah, these are all pineapple tops.
Okay, and so what's it like when you're rooting them? You put them in water or just doing them in dirt?
Some of them we just stick right in the dirt.
Okay.
Yep. We actually haven't done any of these in water, so they've all been put right in the dirt.
So some of the shapes of these pineapples, it kind of makes me think that their root systems may be either a little root bound or possibly they're curved, growing up, not really growing in the right orientation. And then that would cause the above ground growth to, you know, also have a distorted look. And that could come from, you know, it was either root bound in the pot when it was planted, or, you know, it's encountered some very impacted section of soil that the roots aren't able to grow through. So they've switched directions.
Okay.
None of those things are, you know, a huge cause for concern. Most of your pineapples are doing really well and look really good. I'd let them just keep growing, give it time. As the pups start to take over, that second generation of pineapple is, you know, really where the explosion's going to come from. As long as you know, keep adding in your compost like you're doing, you're keeping the soil covered with mulch, you know, you're just building healthy and healthier soil structure in this area.
Yeah, and I just want to share, I mean, I'm in my front yard here. You can see cars driving by. We're just a few feet off of the house, and there is, I think we have 15 different pineapples growing over here.
That's not counting the pups.
Now it's counting the pups, yeah. So, I mean, we're just jonesing for some pineapple. That's
I'm sure. You're going to be drowning in pineapple in another year.
Awesome. So we have this one in the pot over here. And I have several in pots just because, you know, I'm kind of running out of space for a pineapple to take up, you know, a wide girth here. So yeah. What's your experience with growing these in pots?
They do pretty well in pots. You definitely want, you know, at least a 7 to 10 gallon pot to let them mature in, I'd say that one is a little bit small.
Okay.
Pineapples are actually pretty easy to keep in pots. They like well draining soil, and they like the soil in the pot to dry out in between those waterings. They aren't very picky as far as nutrients. They don't mind a poor nutrient soil, and so, you know, once you get them into their forever pot, you know, this one's about ready to go into a larger one, then, you know, you'll add your compost to that, add your worm castings, but then you don't really need to fertilize it for the rest of its life. Keeping them in pots can also be beneficial because they are susceptible to frost. And so, you know, if you've been waiting a year and a half for your pineapple and we're going to have a freeze tomorrow, you're not going to lose it overnight. You can drag it into the greenhouse.
Right.
So, you know, that's definitely a good option, and it makes them a little bit more manageable because obviously a pineapple does take up a lot of space.
Sure.
And when it's in that pot, you know, it doesn't have to take up that space for the entirety of its growing period.
Okay.
So, you know, keep going with it. Just, I mean, you know, this is not a bad size pot for a mature pineapple. You can see how large they will get on their own.
Sure.
So, you know, as big of a pot as you can get for it. And if you really want to move it, put it on wheels. You can get some pot rollers, and that'll make it, you know, quite mobile.
Okay. Awesome.
Doesn't really like it here.
Okay.
It's a, you know.
So I got this from Riley.
Okay.
And it's maybe 2 weeks in this pot, and he suggested to, you know, just give it some partial sun. So it's getting some morning sun and then not much after that. And I haven't been giving it, I mean, I've watered it several times since I put it in the new pot, but.
So lavender is going to be another one of those that you're going to want the soil to dry out in between the watering. So if it feels like this and it's, you know, moist to the touch, this does not need water.
Okay.
Really, you can let this get, you know, dry and then give it water. I would say, you know, even having, normally I'm a stickler for always mulching your pots, but with something like this that, you know, we're trying to create a more Mediterranean environment,
Right.
you know,
It's trapping the moisture.
right.
Okay.
You're keeping a lot of moisture in that pot. Now, your location here is really good. You know, it's going to get quite a bit of sun. It's going to absorb that heat during the day, because this is, you know, a plant that is meant to grow. I mean, really, when it gets more mature, it'll be fine in the full sun. It's got this blue coloration to the leaves, and then that's going to help it, you know, regulate the amount of light that it takes in. You know, it's really adapted to, you know, those Mediterranean, like, desert climates. Now, because of that, lavender doesn't do super great here. You know, it can grow. It's just one of those you need to pay attention to.
Okay.
You know, keep an eye on the water, and, you know, keep an eye on the foliage. If you start to see like fungal problems, then I would recommend, you know, getting it out of this pot and replacing that soil.
Okay. I do have it right outside the front door here, so I can keep an eye on it every day, because I think that was part of the problem. It was out in the back with the 100 other things out there, and just kind of on the pay no mind list. So.
Yep. Yeah, this is not a pay no mind plant, but, you know, you've got it in a good spot right at the center of your attention, so I got higher hopes for this one.
Yeah, me too. This will be lavender number 4. See how it see how it does. Awesome. I thought it was a rosemary. It looks a lot like a rosemary.
It does. I like tarragon, also looks a lot like that, and it does really well.
All right, so I guess we could talk about some avocado trees. They've done much better over here in the partial shade.
It's like they're growing in the understory of a forest.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where we have...
Those were your grafts?
No, that was probably the squirrel destroyed that, because
Oh.
that's what squirrels like to do around here. But I think all the grafts have been destroyed. That might have been a graft.
And then just regrew from the root.
Actually, that
it doesn't look like where you would graft.
I think I did a 45 cut on this one, and tried to merge the two. I think that is one of those 45 cuts, but I may be wrong. Yeah, here's another one here.
So what's happening is your graft just died off, and now you're getting growth from the center of the rootstock.
Yep. So, yeah, the graft never took, and in its place grew a new rootstock. Yeah. So.
So first attempt, and you didn't die. So
Yeah.
you live to experiment again, and that's really the key to learning something like grafting, is just continuing to practice, learning how to get those precise cuts, making sure you have sterile equipment, really sharp, knives ready, and also making sure that you're using fresh scion material is very helpful. And so I would say just keep trying at it, and you're going to find success. With the amount of avocados you got out here, you got the room to experiment.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're fucking around and finding out out here.
Yeah, just like your shirt, right?
Yeah. So from what I've read and seen and been told, like something like this one here that has two branches essentially, like I want to get rid of one of these, at least from what I've been told.
Yeah, when they're young like this, especially for an avocado. Now, so what has happened here is this is the main trunk.
Yep.
And it was growing, and then something happened and it died. Maybe a squirrel ate the top off of it.
Yeah.
And so it tried to regrow again, and then looks like it has also lost the tip. And so it has just shot a new branch out of here. And so this is one of those, decisions that's hard for gardeners. Really, the best thing to do would be to cut this branch and hope that this main one leafs out, so that you're going to have a sturdy trunk when this tree's 40 feet tall.
Right.
Now, intuition would tell you to cut off the leafless one and leave this, because that's going to be, the best for the plant right now. It's going to continue to grow. This is a real healthy trunk, but then you're always going to have, your main trunk as an offshoot. And when they're this small, it's not really going to matter, but if you're growing them out for 30 years, it's going to be a more delicate tree. Like this one over here in the corner, that one looks beautiful.
Yeah, this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one's split.
That might be. Wow. It's got two trunks coming out of the base. Yep. Diembryonic. So you can cut one of those. That would be a really easy fix to improve the health of whichever tree stays. Just taking off one of these main branches, because they're both sprouted from that seed, and genetically they're going to be the same tree, but they still are going to compete. They have differing, they're collecting nutrients for two different stems right now and having to send it up two completely different stems. And so if you were to eliminate one of these, I would say this one that looks a lot weaker.
Sure.
This one is going to have a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, and since I've gotten them out of the full sun, I still have some in the full sun, but they've been doing much better over here in the partial shade. And I don't have to water them as much, and they're just, they're really much healthier. And like one like these too, like I thought some of these we want to pull off, but I know sometimes pulling them off promotes more growth, but
well, I wouldn't deadhead any of these shoots, you know, right now this is branching. This is another one. It looks like the main branch died or got taken off, and so now it's splitting, which this high up on the trunk to have a split, that's not so bad.
Okay.
You know, that's going to leave to more branches later on. You know, really the main problem with this one is that it's just split to one side.
Right.
And so the tree is always going to have, you know, a bit of, and you'd barely notice it when it was larger, but it's always going to be just a little bit weaker because it's really just attached to this axle right here.
Right. Well, a year from now, hopefully I'll have a lot more avocado knowledge to share. So
You might have an avocado forest by then.
I'm hoping so. Yeah.
You should just, you know, you're going to have to find some property and start putting them in the ground.
That's it. That's it. That's the plan. All right.
Is this a citrus you got back here?
Yep, that's a citrus. I think there's another one there. That a citrus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they? Just seeds?
I think they're all like either lemon or pomelo.
Oh, okay. But yeah, definitely a good spot for the mushroom log. Back there in the corner.
So we've got this shiitake mushroom log that my boss gave me. Thank you much, Joe. And so it looks like it's been inoculated. It's a shiitake from twofunguys.com. And I think this is where we want to put it, somewhere back behind this tree.
Yeah, so really what's happening inside that log is it's been inoculated with shiitake fungi, and they're eating that log from the inside out. Now, once they've developed enough, they're going to essentially flower and fruit like a plant would, but that flower is the mushroom that, you know, people are so familiar with, and that's also the part we eat. And so once it's become mature and it's devoured enough of that material, it's going to produce shiitake mushrooms on the outside, so it in theory could send spores and then reproduce and, you know, integrate into other logs. Now, with a at-home inoculated log that's not just, you know, laying around in the forest, we need to emulate some of those conditions that those mushrooms would grow in naturally. Now, you know, for when you think about a rotting log, you know, it's going to be laying in a shady spot in the understory of a forest, not a lot of direct sun, but a lot of high humidity. And so we want to create that. So there's this corner spot here, never really gets any direct sunlight. It's underneath this tree with a very dense canopy. And so keeping it here is going to protect it from the harsher elements. We're also surrounded by fencing and a solid wall, so there's not going to be a lot of heavy winds passing through here. What we want to avoid is the log becoming populated with other types of fungus or bacteria, which could then overpower the shiitake that we really want to grow. And so what we're going to do is create a small stand to keep it here, but keep it off of the ground. That's going to, you know, keep it as isolated as possible while still being, you know, outdoors in a maintained location.
So Sam, I know we had talked about this once before, and I kind of forgot about these over here, but
what do you have back there?
I've got some, I guess you could call it compost tea, but
looks like swamp water.
this is definitely some swamp water at this point.
You just had stuff fermenting inside there?
I
can smell it.
I was trying to let it sit and, you know, out of the sun, and hopefully turn into some good compost tea. It does have some aeration holes in there, but this thing's probably been sitting for 3 or 4 months, so I don't know if it's still any good, if it's worth testing it on something, but
it's always worth testing.
Okay.
Always. You know, you have a plant in a pot, dilute it heavy with water.
Okay.
You know, maybe an ounce to start with, 2 or 3 gallons of water, and pour it on there. see if it, really you're just looking to see if it dies. You know, the leaves would appear burned and the plant would shrivel up if it, because really the danger of this is that it's very high in anaerobic bacteria, because the bacteria that thrive without oxygen, even though you have air holes for aeration, the substance in the liquid is not going to be aerated unless there's air being pumped through it.
Right.
So, you know, you'd have an air pump with a hose that's pushing air inside that liquid, is how you'd promote aerobic bacteria, which could be beneficial to your plants and can't harm them. Anaerobic bacteria can be beneficial as well, but they can harm your plants. So when you're applying an anaerobic compost tea substance, you want to dilute it very heavily, and you don't want to apply it to the foliage of the plants until you're absolutely certain that, you know, you've got those dilution rates down. So yeah, dilute it heavy until you can't really smell it, and then pour it just around the roots into a pot. Or if you have a plant that you're really just willing to sacrifice, pour it on the leaves, because that'll tell you real fast if it's too hot or anything. What all do you have in there?
It's mostly grass clippings.
Okay, so
Fresh grass clippings.
it's probably going to be, you know, initially it was really high in nitrogen, which is, you know, one of the main things that are going to burn your plants. So, you know, be cautious, but it's worth an experiment.
All right, well, video coming soon.
Yeah, that's going to be one of those, you know, you record it, and then 5 days later you come back and you're like, it's still alive.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a good test. You can see.
And I mean, things like that, normally I would, you know, keep it in like a bigger container, but, you know, that is a natural source of fertilizer that, you know, a lot of permaculture farmers
David
use.
the Good?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
His
So he's got his swamp water. Yeah. But he goes like once a week, he says, and he stirs it up.
Yeah.
So.
And he's also putting in like a, you know, he likes to be just very laissez-faire, but he has a pretty controlled like input into that bucket. He's adding comfrey and Mexican sunflower and you know, things that he knows the nutrient content of. And so even when it goes bad, like it doesn't go that bad. So I mean, he's like a very intelligent person, and it's all through experimentation. You know, he just tries stuff out in his yard and see if it works. And then when it doesn't work, he tries something else.
Yeah.
Doesn't ever give up.
That's what inspired me to do some kind of swamp water of my own. Was I watched him do it, but you know, I didn't really have the aeration that he did.
Yeah, it still takes attention, even the lazy composting.
Yeah. Thank you for watching Mike's in the Garden. To check out all of our clips and videos with our walk and talk with Sam Igo from Central Florida Abundance, click on the link in description below. We have a whole playlist. And please feel free to comment with any questions. Reach out to Sam. And please like and subscribe. More great content from Mike's in the Garden and my Central Florida Food Forest. Peace and love, everybody.